You are currently sitting in a room, perhaps a coffee shop or an office break room, and someone is asking you a personal question. It seems harmless. They just want to know your weekend plans or your opinion on the new manager. But while they see a casual conversation, you see an interrogation lamp swinging in a dark room. You don't just hear words, you are scanning for the wire. You are running a background check on their intent before you even decide which version of the truth to release. You calculate the trajectory of every piece of information you give them, estimating how it could be weaponized against you in 3 months. This is not social anxiety. This isn't you being shy or awkward. This is a burn notice. Somewhere in your timeline, you authorized access to the vault of your inner world. And the person you let in didn't just steal the cash, they sold the blueprints to the highest bidder. Now, society looks at your fortified walls and calls you closed off or difficult. They tell you that you need to open up and stop building barriers. They treat your caution like a defect in your personality. They are wrong. What they see as a wall is actually a sophisticated counterintelligence measure. You aren't paranoid. You are simply operating under a permanent state of high alert because you know exactly what happens when the security system fails. Let's look at the logistics of this. Standard social advice operates on the assumption that trust is an infinite resource, something you should hand out freely to maximize connection. They treat trust like a renewable pamphlet you hand out on a street corner. But for you, trust is not paper. It is heavy artillery ammunition. And right now, your supply lines have been cut. Every time you trust someone, you are deploying a massive amount of strategic capital. You are effectively removing a frantic regiment of guards from a section of your perimeter wall and saying, I guess we don't need to watch this sector anymore. When that sector gets breached, when the friend gossips, the partner lies, or the boss throws you under the bus, it isn't just an emotional ouch. It is a devastating loss of infrastructure. It costs you sleepless nights, rumination, and the exhausting labor of rebuilding the fortification. So, when Karen from HR asks why you don't want to participate in the trust fall exercise at the company retreat, she thinks you are being a spoil sport. She doesn't understand the economics of the situation. You are currently operating in a siege mentality. You cannot afford to waste ammunition on targets that haven't been vetted. You aren't being cold. You are preserving your remaining forces for a war of attrition that nobody else realizes you are fighting. This brings us to the biology of the breach. When you experience a profound betrayal, your brain does not file it away as a simple memory. It encodes it as a severe biological threat, indistinguishable from a physical wound. Neuroscience points us toward the concept of prediction error and the subsequent hypervigilance of the amygdala. In a healthy, naive brain, there is a baseline assumption of safety. When that safety is violated by someone close to you, the brain registers a massive error signal. It screams that its map of reality was wrong. Translation: your brain is a triage surgeon who just realized the patient is bleeding out from the inside. To prevent this from happening again, your nervous system rewrites its entire operating code. It initiates a permanent immune response. Just as your body creates antibodies to fight off a virus it has encountered before, your brain creates anticipatory anxiety to fight off potential betrayals. It lowers the threshold for what it considers a threat. A slight change in tone, a delayed text message, or a shift in eye contact, these used to be background noise. Now, they are symptoms of an infection. Your brain is aggressively rejecting any foreign agent that tries to graft itself onto your life. You aren't holding a grudge. You are experiencing an acute immunological rejection of vulnerability. The scar tissue over your trust centers is thick, not because you are stubborn, but because the original wound went down to the bone. If we rewind the clock about 10,000 years, we can see why this mechanism is actually a stroke of evolutionary brilliance. In the ancient world, the trusting archetype, The guy who welcomed strangers into the cave without checking for weapons, or the one who believed the rival tribe's promise of peace, did not live long enough to pass on his genes. He was the first casualty. The people who survived, the ones whose DNA is currently knitting your body together, were the skeptics. They were the ones who watched the perimeter while everyone else slept. Nature does not care about your popularity or your ability to network at a cocktail party. Nature cares about keeping you breathing. By making you suspicious, by making you withhold information, and by making you hypersensitive to deceit, evolution promoted you to the role of the tribe's sentinel. You are the designated watchman. Your inability to trust is not a malfunction. It is a high-level survival strategy designed to ensure that the tribe doesn't get ambushed in the night. You are monitoring the horizon for smoke while everyone else is distracted by the fire. The fact that you feel exhausted by this duty doesn't mean you are broken. It means you are the only one on the night shift in a world full of people sleeping with their doors unlocked. We need to stop using society's dictionary to define your behavior because their definitions are sloppy and insulting. Society calls you jaded. Let's rebrand that immediately. You are not jaded, you are operationally secure. Being jaded implies a lazy cynicism, a resignation that the world is bad. Operational security is an active, intelligent filtering process. It is the difference between a bitter person who hates everyone and a spy who knows exactly who has the clearance to enter the briefing room. Stop calling it isolation. It is actually quarantine. When you pull away from people, you aren't hiding. You are creating a sterile field. You have detected a pathogen, manipulation, inconsistency, drama, and you are sealing the blast doors to prevent contamination. The people banging on the glass, demanding access to your time and energy, are like unwashed surgeons demanding to operate without scrubbing in. You are right to lock them out. Distinguish between the inability to connect and the refusal to be compromised. You are fully capable of connection, but your requirements for entry have shifted from anyone with a pulse to anyone with top-secret clearance. That is not a flaw, that is quality control. So how do we prove this isn't just paranoia talking? We look at the evidence. We look at the micro-habits that define your daily existence. You are a detective walking through a crime scene that hasn't happened yet, and your attention to detail is terrifyingly accurate. First, you engage in preventative redaction. When you tell a story about your life, you instinctively leave out names, locations, and specific feelings, offering a sanitized version of the truth that cannot be used against you later. Second, you have a baseline for human behavior that is sharper than a polygraph. You notice when someone's laugh doesn't reach their eyes, or when their compliment has a bitter aftertaste of envy, identifying the poison before they even serve the meal. Third, you practice exit strategy mapping. When you enter a social contract, a relationship, or even a literal room, your first thought is not how to stay, but how to leave without taking damage if things go south. Fourth, you test the perimeter. You might drop a small, insignificant piece of information to see if it gets repeated to others, using it as a tracer die to identify the leak in your social circle. You aren't crazy, you are high definition. You are seeing the wires and the trapdoors that everyone else is tripping over. Here is your clearance code. You do not need to lower the drawbridge for everyone who knocks. The guilt you feel for being distrustful is a lie sold to you by people who benefit from your lack of boundaries. You are allowed to keep the vault locked. You are allowed to require a 10-year background check before someone gets the combination. If you eventually find someone who is willing to wait outside the walls, who proves they aren't carrying a weapon, and who respects the perimeter you've built, then, and only then, can you consider opening the side gate. Until then, stay in the tower. Keep the surveillance running. You aren't missing out on anything down there but betrayal. If this briefing just declassified your entire personality, subscribe to keep decoding your own operating system.